You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk about the 2024 AVMA AAEP Report on the economic state of the equine veterinary profession. I'm your host, Dr. Amy Grice, business consultant and former equine practice owner. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2025 by CareCredit. So in 2024, this report came out from the AVMA. It was done jointly by Charlotte McKay and the AVMA Economics Division, and I helped with writing some of the commentary. There were 3 surveys done by the AVMA and the AAEP for one of them that informed the report. The first was the Graduating Senior Survey, which is done every single year, gathering data on demographics, debt, compensation, and also the plans of those graduating veterinary students. Then they do an Annual Census of Veterinarians survey as well for all veterinarians in the AVMA. And they collect information on employment and compensation, satisfaction, all kinds of things. So that data was also used in this equine report. And then the AAEP and the AVMA joined together to put together a survey or distribute a survey called the Equine Efficiency Survey, which was a survey that Charlotte and the AVMA Economics Division and myself put together to get information about specifically equine veterinarians and their practice operations. And we really got some great information back. This report is available from the AVMA on their website, on their area where you can purchase resources. It is free to AVMA and AAEP members, and I encourage you to get your own copy. It's not super long. It's maybe 50 pages at most. So not a lot of reading, lots of graphics, great stuff. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about it today because it has some really interesting information. You know, the first thing, when we think about the senior survey, back in 2014, so starting 10 years when this survey data for the senior survey was sort of beginning. We've got 10 years of data in this particular report. So back in 2014, 8.6% of graduates entered equine practice either into an internship or into an associate position without an internship. And so about 2018, like 4 years later, it had dropped a whole percentage. We were down to 7.6% of people joining equine practice in either an internship or directly into associate positions. 1 year later, it was 6.6%. In 2020, 5.6%. 2021, 5.3%. And boy, you really start to feel a little nervous as things just going down so quickly, right? So then we saw some good news in 2022. It bumped up a little to 5.7, and in 2023, the number was 6.1. So maybe we're turning the ship a little bit, and so that is good news. We've got 6.1% of graduates entering either internships or associate positions without an internship. Now, during the time, there's about a 2018 through 2023, there was an average of 1.4% of new graduates went into full-time associate positions in equine practice. That's not very many, really not very many at all. Most people, when they're joining equine practice, have continued to do internships. So when we look at mixed animal practice or food animal practice, there are more people entering food animal or mixed animal practice than equine practice. Not a lot more, but certainly equine is at the bottom of the heap. So when new associate equine veterinarians selected where they were going to go to work, and generally they got several offers, the reason that they chose the offer that they did choose in 2023, 92% said it was mentorship. 84% said it was the people they were going to work with. So, how they felt when they went there for their internship, like that they would enjoy working there and someone would help them, mentor them, be available to them. And 73% said location. And so many people want to choose the location where they want to work and then find a job there rather than look for a job and then move to that location. So that's kind of new and interesting.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by CareCredit. CareCredit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By helping to bridge the gap between cost and care, CareCredit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. Clients have a flexible way to pay over time for all types of care, and practices get paid in 2 business days. It's a payment experience everyone can feel good about.
When we think about internships, of all the new graduates that are doing internships, almost 20% of those graduates are equine. The next highest number is companion animal, but equine is a substantial number of the interns that are out there when you consider all the new graduates. When we look at over the years, like from before 1980, so a long, long time ago, the percentage of people, of equine veterinarians that had an internship experience has been climbing over year. It is in the period of time 2010 to 2019, it was almost 80% of graduates that were going into equine practice did an internship. So it has become something that people generally are thinking they're going to do when they want to go into equine practice. However, in the graduating years 2020 and 2021, that had fallen to 66%. So people were taking advantage of some of the opportunities out there in associate positions by just going straight into practice rather than doing an internship. So it's possible that we're going to see that trend continue. When people were asked their reason for pursuing an equine internship, and they were asked this in 2022, the primary reason that people plan to apply, they plan to apply for residency, and that's why they were doing an internship. And that was the primary reason for 37% of those answering this question. But the next most prevalent 2 answers were that people felt they needed more training before entering equine practice, or that they felt that the position, the job that they ultimately wanted to have would require an internship or they wouldn't get hired. It's hard to get the experience with just the general skills in veterinary school, I believe these days. There's just less teaching herds and there's less opportunity to have that hands-on experience. And so when we think about compensation, the average starting salary, and this is amazing, for all the 2023 graduates that chose full-time employment in equine practice, now we're talking go to an associate position without an internship, it rose almost 63% since 2020. 63% between 2020 and 2023. Wow. And for those that went into equine internships, that same period, 2020 to 2023, compensation increased a little more than 45%. That's wild, right? So if we look at that, the actual numbers, those going straight into an associate position without an internship back in 2020 were offered an average salary of $57,952 in 2020, like about $58,000. In 2023, the average offer was $94,389. Wow. Equine internships. In 2020, the average equine intern was offered $30,867. In 2023, $44,822. Now, that seems pretty amazing. What a good jump that is. However, when in 2023 the equine people were being offered about 45,000, the companion animal internships, the average was 56,000. So we're still trailing behind the companion animal folks, and those that entered directly into companion animal associate position without an internship were up around 130 in 2023 to our 94 and change. So, but I mean, when you think about how positive that is, it is cause for celebration. So when we think about what we would need to earn in terms of revenue to earn that 94,000, then things get a little bit dicey. So that's something that we have to keep in mind. There was not a big difference between there were a few men, 7 that entered equine associate positions without an internship, and they were a little bit lower, in fact, in their average salary than the 30 females that went straight into an associate position. As interns, though, they were offered typically $10,000 more, the 18 guys, 10,000 more than the 114 females to do an internship. I'm not sure what the other differences in those positions were, but there was a gender difference in that area. And when we think about negotiating, the 2023 graduates that entered equine practice, 53% of the women negotiated for their salary and only 43% of the males. So the women were really pushing. And that is pretty interesting. One of the things that I found interesting in this study was that the gross annual income of equine veterinarians that were practice owners that had done an internship earned an average of $30,000 more than their peers, also practice owners, who did not do an internship. So I thought that was kind of interesting. We don't know why. We would be guessing as to why that would have happened. The debt of new graduates who accepted those full-time associate positions in equine practice, including those that had no debt, the average was 154. If you took out the people with no debt, then the average was 184, almost 185,000. And with people with internship opportunities that were going forward with them, the values weren't all that different. They had a little bit less debt. But we're not out of the woods, because when we look at those that, owe more than $220,000 on their education, it's 1 in 3 graduates owe lots and lots of money, and that can really hold them back as far as feeling like they're successful. The debt to income ratio, man, it used to be up close to 5 for equine people. And in this 2023 year for these graduates, equine practice 1.7. So, wow, that's a huge positive difference, really being driven not so much by the amount that's being borrowed, but by the salaries that are finally being achieved. Moving on to demographics of equine veterinarians, the AVMA has said that we've got in the country, the United States, we've got 3,785 equine exclusive veterinarians. We are a pretty small club. And 60% of us now are females and 40% are males. And of course, the older a person is, the more likely they are to be male in this cohort. Of those that are 60 years old or more, 44% of the total males are in that category, and only 2% of the total males are under 30. So it is really a changing demographic that we've got going. Right now, females are about 2/3 of the equine veterinary population. Obviously, they're younger and have less years of experience in general than the guys. When we look at the location of where these veterinarians are located, the information from the American Horse Council's 2023 report showed that Texas had the most horses, followed by California, followed by Florida. And so it's no surprise that those are the 3 states that have the most horses. They also have the most people, interestingly enough. Other places that have lots of veterinarians, they're the next tier down, would be New York, Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Kentucky. So when you get this report, you can actually look at it graphically to see where the veterinarians that do equine are located in the United States. So that's kind of cool. So we've got an amazing kind of unemployment level right now. The Census of Veterinarians by the AVMA showed 0.5% for unemployment rate for U.S. veterinarians in 2023, and that's been pretty steady for a while. There are so many equine practice jobs out there. If most of the time, if people want and can work, they can easily find a position. There are 17% of associate equine veterinarians are working in a regional or national group of practices in 2022. So we do have some sort of groups of practices that are having more of the associates working on them in them, and they will almost undoubtedly be practices that have, multiple veterinarians. When we think about where people worked, especially this particular information is associate veterinarians. Where did they work? And this is information from 2022. And so we've got, in terms of associate veterinarians, 31% of them worked at specialty referral hospitals, full service places that had an ambulatory division as well. 28% of them worked at a place that was ambulatory with a haul-in facility, and 22% of them were ambulatory only. Now, 3/4 of associates are in general practice, and they're serving, all different kinds of horses, multiple sectors, whether that's some breeding, some backyard, some sport horse, like a really good general mixed practice. That's 3/4 of the associates. And then the next highest figure was for hunter, jumper, eventing, and dressage, at 10%. So those were the associates who were doing English sport horse pretty much. And then there's 5% in standard bred racing and 4% in Western performance. Now, when we think about compensation going up so much for really brand new associates right out of school, it's kind of disappointing to see that, equine real income, where it's adjusted for inflation, has, had a decline in 2023 when which in many ways is because of inflation. It declined from 2022. And so it is now 113,900 as real income that's adjusted for inflation. And then the sort of nominal income is a similar figure in 2023, but it was lower earlier years. But that's all equine veterinarians. So that's the compensation for equine veterinarians is the closing the gap from experienced veterinarians to unexperienced veterinarians. And so that's something that we need to be cognizant of and think about, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. We have to be able to earn more in order for this to be a viable kind of profession. Now, some of the analysis of the data from the Practice Efficiency Survey, there were some factors that influenced the incomes. And if you were in an independently owned private practice with multiple doctors, that increased your compensation or income over a solo private practice by $60,000 by having those multiple veterinarians. Practice owners earned about $65,000 more than associates, and hunter, jumper, eventing, and dressage veterinarians were about $33,000 over those that had simply a general practice serving all comers. Having a facility brought a premium of about $40,000 over ambulatory only. So interesting things. If we move on to employee benefits, one of the things that was very, very common, one of the most highly given benefits was continuing education expenses, which 2/3 of practices provided. I was kind of glad to see that paid family leave was given by 14% of practices. That was kind of exciting. And educational loan repayment by 4%. So benefits are really starting to be, since they're a part of the whole compensation package, it's so important to really understand what the value of all those benefits are. When we look at the number of hours worked per week by full-time equine veterinarians in private practice, we had a peak in 2022 of 58 average full-time hours worked per week with a median of 60. That was in 2022, and that dropped fairly sharply in 2023. The median was 50 hours, and the average dropped down to 56. So we gained 2 hours there over 2022 in the average, but 10 hours in the median. It's still quite a bit more than what when we look at all veterinarians in private practice full-time, they are at 43 hours per week. And as we know, when the AVMA does these surveys of private practice veterinarians, it's mostly companion animals. So equine veterinarians are working 8 hours on average. more than 8 to 10 hours more than small animal, companion animal veterinarians. So there are more veterinarians that want to work fewer hours for less compensation than there are veterinarians who want to work, equine veterinarians who want to work more hours for more compensation. There's only 13% that want to work more. 27% want to work less hours, and they would be willing to take less compensation. And 60%, so a little over half, are happy with where they are. They don't want to change their hours or their compensation. Satisfaction. Satisfaction differs between owners and associates. In 2023, owners of equine practices had higher rates of satisfaction with their jobs, with their lifestyle, with their compensation. In fact, when we look at the lowest amount of satisfaction with associates, only 40% said they were satisfied or very satisfied with their profession and their lifestyle. And owners, 58% were satisfied or very satisfied with the profession, and 72% satisfied or very satisfied with their lifestyle. So there really is a difference in how people that are equine veterinarians are feeling depending on their ownership status. I think one of the shocking things about this particular report, where equine veterinarians were asked if they had considered leaving equine practice for reasons other than retirement. 23% of associates and 12% of owners are considering or have definitely decided to leave equine practice. And what's really scary, of those considering leaving equine practice, almost 30% graduated in the year 2020 or 2021, and almost 2/3 graduated in the year 2000 or later. So we are at risk for losing the people that we have in equine practice. It's kind of a scary time when you think about it. 58% of these veterinarians chose lifestyle and the number of hours worked, their work-life balance, their emergency coverage responsibilities, or their low salary and compensation as their primary reason for considering leaving equine practice. So we have work to do. This particular study, I've just touched on some of the points. It is an amazing study, and I encourage you to download it from the AVMA because it's a pretty data-filled and there's a lot of interesting information that can inform your decisions, inform how you decide you're going to make changes in your practice. Thank you all for joining me today for the Business of Practice podcast. And a big thanks to our sponsor, CareCredit. And to all my listeners out there, be brave, embrace change.